The recording hopefully will contain all the information that I've talked about, so I'll try to show it here. But depending on your question, maybe I'll go up to the whiteboard and it'll just be noise for the people who are listening to the recording. So I'm trying to think of how I want to do this. I couldn't just make it an open forum. You ask questions and I answer them. But before I start that, what I want to do real quick is just talk to you. I looked over the quiz and I looked over the worksheet that you just got done working on, or still finishing your updates on. And I looked to see what topics were in there, and this is what I found. You have to know how to declare a variable. You should know the difference between a constant and a variable. You should know what the operators are. You should understand the order of precedence. You should know the downfalls of integer division. You should understand modulus. You should know how to do date calculations, how to add to a date. You should know how to do concatenation, and you should know how, I'm sorry, I skipped over mixed math. That's integers and doubles in the same equation. To keep it simple, there's no doubles and decimals in the same equation. That never happens, doesn't work. But anything else can be mixed, and what happens when you mix. And finally, the combined operators, those are the plus equals, plus plus, minus minus. What do they mean? And in the last class, I asked the students, where did these come from? And Matt's answer was, the devil. True enough, came from my notes. If you look at the outline in my notes, variables, how to declare them, constants, data types, calculations, order precedence, integer, modulus, mixed type. I think what happens is we cover so much in this chapter that you hear this stuff and it makes perfect sense when you hear it, but then 5-10 days later, after you've heard 4 hours of more stuff, you tend to forget that it's here in my notes. Everything that is on the quiz is in my notes. Not exactly, right? But it asks you to declare a variable, and my notes show you how to declare a variable. It asks you to do some calculations. My notes show you how to do integer math, how to do mixed math, how to do order of precedence. They all have that. The quiz is open notes for those of you that didn't hear it before. It's open notes, open book, untimed. You don't have to finish it in 2 hours. And those of you in the Tuesday class, you got till 5 o'clock before classes start, and there's no classes in here. You can just keep right on and going. The downside is somebody should be proctoring you, just to make sure. But it's all there, I think. But me lecturing on it and you all going, yep, makes perfect sense, and then you applying it is two different things, and that's why there's a worksheet. And some of you did very well on the worksheet. Most of you did just fine on the worksheet and are learning from your mistakes. Others need to do some more review. And that's part of what this is all about. If you want to ask questions about the worksheet, I think I'll answer them. My first thought was there's a lot of people still need to do their updates, and I start giving answers in here, and they're just going to copy the answers into their worksheet, and hopefully you won't do that because that won't help you on the quiz. So if you've got questions about, I keep getting this wrong on the worksheet, what am I doing wrong? I can bring that worksheet up and we'll take a look at it. What I'd prefer to do is talk about what's in the practice exercises, but I haven't heard anybody, nobody's asked me about the questions here on the practice exercises saying, how did you get that answer? Nobody's asked. So I'm guessing that everything's cool, or maybe not. So there's the outline of what you need to know. If it's not on that list, you probably don't need it for the quiz. Doesn't mean you don't need it, because I talked about scope and I talked about other things in my notes. You'll need it sooner or later, but not for this quiz. Is there a topic there? And I'm just going to open it up now for a while. And if nobody asks questions, you're going to get me into lecture mode, and then good luck. Because I can just go down all those things, and I left myself some room here to fill in what I would think are the highlights of those. But I'd rather answer your questions and see where that takes us. What is it you don't understand, or you just don't know? Which one did you get wrong?
Mixed type math.
Can I explain what?
Mixed type math.
Mixed type math, okay. We'll come down here and I'll kind of take notes on what I'm talking about as I talk about it. Mixed type math simply means that we've got an equation that's got a combination of integers, doubles, and decimals, because that's what we do math with, right? Those are the only types that we use. So it is an equation, one equation with a mix of integers, doubles, and decimals in it. So over here, this is the worksheet. These are all integers and integers. If it's integers and integers, what's your answer going to be? What type? It's an integer. If it's double and double, where do I have? I don't have any doubles in there. If I had an equation that was doubles and doubles, then the answer is double. If it's decimals and decimals, the answer is of type decimal, always. Those are not mixed. Those are all the same type. When they're mixed, let me switch to the worksheet. Maybe I can find one there. That's probably going to open in Microsoft Word. When they're mixed, C# automatically converts them to the biggest type. And in a second, I'll explain to you what I mean by the biggest type. Okay, here they're all integers, right? Zoom in a little bit. This problem says everything is an integer. No, that's the wrong one. Here, all variables are integers. If they're all integers, all of the answers are integers. Have to be, by rule, if they're all the same type. So if I divide C, and who knows what C is at this page, at this point, let's say that C is 5 and B is 2. The answer is 2.5, except they're integers. So what happens to the half? Kyle?
It drops it.
Drops it. That's correct. It drops it. So whenever you do integer division, that's another one of the items on my list, right? If whenever you do integer division, any decimals are dropped. But why would there be decimals? Go ahead.
Oh, I had a question.
Okay, let me answer. Let me get my answer first.
Okay.
Okay. If I'm using integers, why would there be decimals?
Two numbers don't go into each other.
Say it louder, Tim.
Two numbers that don't go into each other like equal.
Go into each other. He's saying division. The only way you get decimals with integers, potentially, is when you're dividing. If you add two integers, two whole numbers, you get a whole number. If you multiply two whole numbers, you get a whole number. The only time you could potentially get decimal places is when you divide. So like this example, when I said 5 divided by 2. The only time you have to worry about integers is when you're dividing. Right.
So even if you get like 2.9, it wouldn't be 3, it'd still be just 2?
Correct. Even if you
Okay.
get 2.9 and you're doing integers, the decimal places are dropped.
Okay.
The only time that we don't lose decimal places is when we're formatting output, which is not on my list, so let's not talk about it. We did, right? We just got done talking about making the sales tax calculator stuff pretty. We formatted stuff. That rounds. That's the only time things round. So if they're all the same, then you get the same kind of answers. But if you start mixing stuff, like here's a W and an X and a Y. W is a double. I guess that's easy to say. W is a double. Everything else is an integer. So these are two integers, and that's a double. So now this is a mixed math equation. Sort of. It is mixed math. There's integers and doubles. But the first thing I see here is parentheses. An order of precedence, right, says parentheses get done first. Those are two integers. When I add x and y, what do I get? An integer. The numbers in this case happen to be 11. That's an integer. And it's still an integer because we did the parentheses first. It's not like C# looks at this big old huge equation and says, are there any doubles in there? If there's a double in there anywhere, the whole thing's a double? No. As soon as you try to do something that's mixed, then it adjusts. So here I have an integer and an integer, and C says, cool, that's an integer, 11. Times 12, uh-oh, that's a double. So C# says, 11, you are now 11.0, you're a double. And then it multiplies by W, which is 3.5, and I get 11 times 3.5, which if I remember right is 38.5. So the mixed math is only mixed when you're looking at one operator at a time. One operator at a time. So down here, I have z times y, or x times y, those are integers. This results in an integer. Times w, that's a double. So now everything temporarily gets turned into a double. Times z, that's an integer. Turns the z into a double. Because what I meant by biggest so when we look at the different types of data, in my notes, they're listed from smallest to biggest. 1, 2, 4, 8, 4, 8, 16, pretty much smallest to biggest, and especially with the numbers, they're pretty close. Doubles are bigger than any integer except the long, and they're the same. If you do mixed type math, integers get turned into doubles. If you mix doubles with decimals, you get a syntax error. You cannot mix doubles with decimals. They just don't play well together. You can mix integers with decimals. If you use those in a mixed equation, then it becomes a decimal. Decimals are bigger. They have more accuracy. They have decimal places. We don't want to strip decimal places out of doubles most of the time. Kyle, what else? Got an example you want me to look at? Okay. Okay.
Look at 3D.
3D,
Yes.
as in the worksheet? There, D. This one. First of all, we're talking about mixed math, right? So let's clarify that. That's int, int, int. The answer is going to be int. So that's the first thing. When you write the answer down, you start writing decimal places, we got a problem. Decimal places, just lop them off. Okay? So, next question. There's something else in there that's on my list, and that's modulus. Dun, yeah, dun, dun, dun. All right, so this is really x mod, this is 5 mod 6 divided by 4. 5 mod 6 divided by 4. What's the question?
What's writing down? Well, so
I'm sorry, you're talking into your monitor.
Oh, so you take out the 1.2, so you just be
What 1.2?
Oh, because you 5 mod 6.
What 1.2? Let's not get ahead of myself here.
Oh,
Okay, what do I do first?
plug in the numbers to the
I did that. 5 mod 6 divided by 4. What do I do first?
5 mod 6.
5 mod 6. Do you know the answer?
1.2.
No.
5.
How did we get 5? Let's help her out. I'm going to help her out. No offense to those of you that know the answers, but it bothers other students. They stop asking questions if you keep answering because they figure I'm the only dumb one in the room, and that's not true. There's plenty of dumb people that know. You're all smart enough to learn this, okay?
I'm done.
So you're all smart enough to learn this, but I'm going to answer because that way she doesn't, and he doesn't feel like I'm the only one. I'm not asking any more questions. So 5 mod 6, and here's a division. Let me turn off the stuff there. Hang on just a second. Click in the table, go to layout, get rid of the grid lines. There. So 5 mod 6, which do I put where? Kai? Does the 6 go here or here?
6 goes on the outside.
6 goes on the outside, very good. 5 on the inside. How many times does 6 go into 5? None. So the answer up here is 0.
Oh,
0 times 6 is what?
0.
Subtract from 5 is,
5.
and so what's the answer? 5. Because remember this side over here in the shaded answer, maybe, is the modulus. So there's the first problem. You had 1.2, which is confusing because 5 is bigger than 6. How can it be 1.2? If anything, it should be 0.666 something, right? So this you can do, by the way. You'll have scrap paper. You're allowed to use scrap paper on your quiz, etc. Okay? And so what I would do here is say this is now 5 on the next line divided by 4. Right? And just work your way down. Now 5 divided by 4, that's division. How many times does 4, go into 5? Kai? Once. What about the decimal place? It's integer division. At this point, you can stop and say 1. And if this is C, is that what you asked me?
D.
D. 3, 3, yep, 1. That's right. Well, I got these answers memorized. So there's lots of things in this little tricky equation. First of all, do you know how to do modulus? Right? And we cleared that up a little bit. Do you know that modulus gets done first? Why? Because it has a higher order of precedence? No.
Left to right.
Because they're the same order of precedence, so then you do them good, left to right. And so I do these first. First thing you got to be thinking about when you see equations like this is order of precedence. Because the order you do them can often affect the way the answer comes out. Yes?
So does modulus always get done before, or only if it's before, like?
Modulus gets done before addition and subtraction. That's all I can say.
Okay.
Other than that, it's done left to right with multiplication and division. So here's a modulus at that end. Here I multiply first for 2 reasons. Number 1, they're in parentheses. Could I take these parentheses out?
It'd still be the same.
It'd be exactly the same. They're there to clarify, I guess.
Yeah.
Confuse you? Probably. Do I need them? No. Do I need any of these parentheses? No. Because x times y gets done first, times w gets next, and that times z is next. And again, if I were doing this, this is 5, 6, 4, no, 5, 6, 3.5, and 4. What gets done first? 5 times 6, right? 30 times 3.5 times 4. If you're still struggling with this, and even if you're doing them in your head and you're good at this, I'd still do this, just to be safe. And then what gets done next? Now I multiply 30 times 3.5. 30 times 3.5, I'm going to get a double, right? Even if there wasn't a half there, I'd still get a double, because that's 90 plus 15 is 105. No, it's 105.0 at this stage, times 4. Then I get 420.0. If you gave me 420, I was ecstatic. You got it right. Give me 420.0, I was impressed. No extra bonus points, but it's a double. Because there's a double in the equation, the end result will be a double. It didn't turn into a double. This was still integer math. After the first phase, we're still doing integers. Then we said, uh-oh, mixed math. Got to do a double.
So you can, the answer is 0.0.
Yeah, I would, to be perfectly clear, to show me that you understand it's a double, 0.0. And if I put parentheses in, it doesn't change the order in that case. What else do we want to talk about?
6,
Time out. Okay, real quick. I just want to put something in my modulus here. 5 mod 6 means remainder of 6 into 5, right? To make sure you don't flip those around. Go ahead. Question. Worksheet. If you're talking about the worksheet, let me know so I can go there and we can see what you're talking about.
no, it's calculation. Yeah, calculation.
Worksheet. Okay. Which one?
60. The due date equals today's date plus 30 days.
Okay.
I originally put it in one
Mm-hmm.
sentence. Can you do
Yes. There are a couple of answers to that. A couple of ways to do this that are all correct. You may combine them into one command.
Is that using the new?
Pardon me?
Is that using the new equals new?
Well, let's take a look here. We got to do dates, and if I'm not 100% sure about dates, and I'm not 100% sure about dates, so I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to find, first of all, I want to define a date, because does it say declare?
No.
Doesn't say declare.
No.
It just says set due date equal to today's date plus. So that's really just calculations, but how do I set it to today's date?
Don't declare.
Here's date time dot today. I just jump down to date calculations. So that gives me the first part of this. How do I set due date to today? Okay. So I should be able to say that due date is equal to date time, and that should be capitalized right, dot today. That should be capitalized right. Normally when you're doing C#, it does it for you, right? Pretty much. You have IntelliSense to help you with that, but my notes should be capitalized properly. If you ever capitalize it wrong because you're copying my notes, just tell me. I'll give you your points back and I'll fix my notes.
And then you do dot add after that.
Now that's a good question, all right? This comes to Joni's question. She said, first time I did this, I said due date dot add days. I think this is what you said, right, Joni?
No, I did like you did the first one.
Okay.
And I think I put dot add date.
Okay, that's fine. I'm coming there. But somebody did this. Somebody did this. And it's not right. Looks good, doesn't it? Add 30 days to due date, but that's not what this does. What this does is it creates a brand new, remember whenever C# does calculations, 2 plus 3, it creates a new number, 5. This creates a new date. Unnamed, temporary, date, adds, sets it the same as due date, adds 30 to it, and then what do you do with it? In this case, I'm done. Gone. If you want to actually save that, you say due date equals whatever it was before plus 30 and then put it right back on top of itself. That's one way to do it. Now, if you leave this part out, it's technically wrong, though I'm still pretty thrilled that you did add days 30 instead of plus 30. Can't do plus 30 because remember the devil put that in his notes in here someplace. That may be what you want to do right here, but it's not legal. Right? Can't do that. It's an error. It says so right there. Right? Here's what you have to do. You have to do the add days. So if you wanted, and that's what I did, add days 30. If you wanted to do a shortcut, and by the way, it's amazing how many add days 3 I got. Why? Because that's what it says in the notes, add 3. I asked for 30, come on. Right? You can combine them. Today, date time today, is a date. Anytime you want to, you can add things to a date. Those two do exactly the same thing. As far as I'm concerned, they're both right.
You don't need new in front of the date time?
No.
Equals new.
You know what? I don't know. I'm not sure. So here's the next thing I would do if I was at home. I mean, you're not going to be able to do this on the quiz, but I'm going to go grab one of my handy dandy programs, like the sales tax calculator, and just open it up so that I can do some playing around in the code. So in here, just for grins, I'm going to say, I'm going to declare due date. I have to here. If I'm going to test it, I have to declare due date. Its type is date time, due date. Okay, that's cool. And now I wanted to say that due date is equal to a date time dot today dot add days 30. My gut feel is this is going to be okay. No squiggles. Does that mean it works? No squiggles means no syntax errors. It's syntactically correct. That is correct. Why doesn't it need a new? Because when you ask for today, what does that automatically generate? A date. Ta-da! Without you asking for it. It has to generate this date object in order to call it and to make it today. And then we say that date object you just created, add 30 to it. Thank you. Done. Now copy that into due date. So no, you don't. Does it matter if you put it in there? It might. Yep. Now it says you don't new when you're asking for today because it's already a date. Don't tell me to make a new one when it already is, but if that was in there, I wouldn't complain very loud either. On the quiz, if I see syntax errors that are just obvious and you ought to know, I'll mark them wrong. But if there's subtle things like the new, I mean, if you looked at some of your fellow people's worksheets, there's stuff I let go. You're doing it on a worksheet. And by the way, when you're doing your Unit 5 worksheets, let's just go in here and try some of this stuff. Why are you writing, instead of writing it out by hand, go try it. See if what your answer is works. Play around in there a little bit. How do I know if this works? Well, I can do the trusty dusty breakpoint thing, right? And run and calculate and see what I get down there. It's my sales tax, so I have to give it something. And there's my breakpoint. And now I can go to the next command. It's this button. And look inside here. November 16th sounds right. Okay, so yes, that works without the new, but that's a valid question, and I couldn't tell you. Could I? I honestly could not tell you. I had to go try it. I could have looked it up. I could have Googled it, but for me, it's easier just go try it in C#.
Today's the 17th.
Yeah, but there's 31 days in October. And it knows that more better than we do, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. It was close. I trusted after that. Good question. In case it didn't hit the recording, she said, isn't today the 17th? Yeah, it says so right down there. But there's 31 days in October. Matt?
Can I question one on the worksheet as well?
Sure.
The one right before that with the exponent equation.
Whoa, this guy here.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you do this? That you cannot type in C#, and I had many people just copied that and said, I'm going to do this in C#. You can't do that. There's no way to get the little exponentiated 2 in C#. I can do it in Word, but I can't do it in C#. Many of you gave me this. Sorry, I got to get to the right Word document here. Where did you get that? Excel? Yes. Excel does that. Visual Basic does that. PHP. When you do searches on the web, somebody in the other class said Google it. When you Google on the web, start with C#. Because if you just Google exponentiate programming exponent or whatever power, You're going to get VB answers and C# answers and PHP answers and heaven forbid COBOL and Fortran answers. If you start all of your searches with C#, you're more likely to get the right answer. Next semester, next year when you take HTML, you Google JavaScript space. What's your question? That doesn't work. What does B squared mean? B times, what does B cubed mean? B times itself 3 times, whatever that little number is, that variable will times itself that many times. So one solution is this. That's acceptable. The other solution comes out of the book. I didn't talk about it. Built into Visual Studio is another class. We just brought in Volcker Tools. That was a class that I wrote. There are other classes built into Visual Studio. One of them is called Math. And it has a pl function. How do you know this? It's in the book. Or maybe you Googled it and you found this. It's not power, it's pl. And you give it 2 numbers. That would be 2 raised to the 3rd power. That's another way to do it. And you can also put a B in there. Now this is not a complete equation. It's an expression. An expression is just a part of an equation. When you look at that question that Matt asked about, where did I say to put this answer? I didn't. I just want you to translate this. Okay. So that is another version of B times B. The other tricky part is that. What does that mean, Matt?
4 times A times C.
4 times A times C. You may not use algebraic type equations in C#. When you say the word times, your brain has to click into the star. So 4AC, which I saw a lot of in the answers, doesn't work. You have to do 4 times A times C to translate that. And that's the point of all of this. So down here we have a 2A. That's 2 times A. Okay, so using the pl there, it's minus 4 times A times C divided by 2 times A. But in this one, the devil threw in another kick. Because if we do order of precedence, what gets done first? This. Cool. Then what? This. Then what? This. Oh, that's not what I want. Okay, cool. We put parentheses around this because I want it to subtract first. Still not right. Because now what happens? Now it does this and it divides by 2. And then it multiplies by A. That's not the same. That's the same as putting the A out here. That's not the same. The A's underneath. It says multiply these first and then divide it into that. So this one's a tricky one. The one I'm giving you on the quiz and the one that's in the practice sheet's not quite as bad. That's tricky, but very common. Very commonly used equation. Did I clear it up for you?
Yeah, I think.
Question? What's not clear?
Well, I think I have it right now, but
Here's what I have.
I have riddled with. I did the just B times B.
That's fine. So this goes away, becomes B times B. One set of parentheses all the way out here, and one set of parentheses here, so that gets done first.
So it should be 2 sets of parentheses.
No, I only have one.
Okay.
Watch. Order of precedence. What happens first? This. Cool.
Yeah.
What happens next? All of that.
Oh.
Cool. Don't need parentheses. Then what happens? Divide. Oops. Now I need parentheses to make sure I subtract.
Okay. See, I just split up the B's and the 4AC.
With more parentheses.
Yeah.
Perfectly legal. Leave it.
So I can? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if we just use the math file and we use the comma, then it just makes it an expression or an
Exponentiation, yes, power does the exponentiation.
Exponentiate, yeah.
That's the literal translation
Okay, so
of
the
b
comma
squared.
comma makes it so that whatever number is after that comma then?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure.
Okay, his question back to POW here, the other version. And you have to have the math there, the math class. You have, just like you had to invoke Voker tools first, you have to do V tools. You have to say math, and then in there is a pre-built routine that does power b squared.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure.
That's the literal translation. Does it really matter? No, because b times b means the same thing. Now, if the question said b raised to the c power, oh, now how many times are you going to multiply b? You don't know, and you have to use POW. Right, but that's a whole lot further down the road.
Did you say you can use the caret?
No, you may not
Oh,
use the
okay.
caret.
Okay.
It's not a C# thing. And you're now training to be C# programmers.
Is that Visual Basic now?
Visual Basic, I think, it's been a while, but yeah, I think so. And it also gets used in Swift. I don't know. If I ever need to do exponentiation, you know where I'm going. Probably to Google. Because I know the word is exponentiation, and that's nasty enough to spell. But I'm going to say C#, JavaScript, Swift, exponentiation. So let me just try that once as a demo. Swift exponentiation. Swift exponentiation operator in Swift. Says there isn't one. There isn't an operator, but you can use the POW function, which isn't built in either. You got to write your own. Oh man, you got to be kidding me. I would have sworn there was exponentiation in there. Maybe.
That's what's supposed to make it easier.
Maybe I'm thinking of JavaScript. Well, I also have to look at the date. All right, this is June of this year, I guess, because there's no year. That's fairly current. If you're getting advice from 2010 on Swift, there's no such thing. But if you're getting advice from 2010, be careful. Okay? Everything you want to know is on the internet, but half of it's wrong.
Thanks.
How reassuring.
So here again,
It's probably
there is no exponentiation in JavaScript. It's back to the POW function. All right, but I don't remember this stuff, so and I don't expect you to. I expect you to be able to find it. And how do I expect you to dig that out of the book? I've been assigning book readings since the beginning, right? Because in my notes it says, here, read these pages. Some of you do and some of you don't. That's fine, but there are some things hiding in there. Good? Matt?
Yep, thank you.
What else? Here's operators. Let me add that real quick. No exponentiation operator. Use math.pow. There, notes. Yes, ma'am.
Can you try like one of the fives? Number 5 in the worksheet, any of them?
These?
Yes.
They're all different. But let's go back again to declare. Okay, if you see the word declare, I need to see a type. Okay, so this first one says declare two variables that are integers. So I need to see the type. All right. Now you can. The types first, and there's 6 types, right, Kai? Int, double, string, date, decimal, maybe Boolean. Only one of those 6. They're in my notes. You forget the types. I've seen a lot of integers in the worksheet. Yes, that's how we say it, but that's not the translation. It's int. Right? So it said integer, so you translate to int. If you're using Word, you undo to take out the capitalization because it's not capitalized. And then a variable called x. You've seen me do it. It's legal to do that. Or you end one and start a new one. The fact that I ask for 2 variables doesn't mean it has to be on one line. It doesn't say do it on one line. I would never say that because I don't think it's a good idea. except for testing stuff. This is perfectly acceptable. Better answer would be describe each one of those, but how do you describe X? Why am I using X? Why don't I pick something more meaningful? Because these are not meaningful equations. They're just made up equations. X is acceptable, just like J is acceptable. It's just not real descriptive, which some of you said, which is fine. But it's legal. When we get to Unit 6, we're going to declare some variables that are single letters for convenience. It goes all the way back to 1960 something. We're still doing it for convenience.
So then for the declare variables, you also want a comment after that?
I would love one if you can describe it, but this is kind of, what are they for? Who knows?
Just declaring a variable called.
Okay, you could do that. Doesn't help me much, but yeah. Usually I want to describe what's stored inside there. And the assignment doesn't tell me what's stored inside there.
Thanks, Booker.
You're welcome. Next one says, initializes a variable, doesn't say declare. That means you can assume the variable already exists. What's it called? Grade. What type is it? Because it says so right here, it's a string. You don't have to declare it. You don't have to tell me it's a string. I already, in this case, said it already exists. Set it to the grade B. If I'm changing the variable grade, it goes on the left-hand side of the equal sign. You're all getting pretty good at that. Then what do I want to change it to? B. Not quite. That's a variable, isn't it? Looks just like all the other variables. Those lame X and Y's, it's capitalized, so. But it's not supposed to be a variable. We want the actual letter B to go in there. And if I say it that way, that usually gives you the answer. Okay, but I want the actual letter B to go in there, so I have to put quotes around it. And I have to type them right. If it doesn't say declare, you do not have to provide a type. Probably shouldn't. Unless there's some extenuating circumstances, and that's pretty rare. This one says declare and initialize. One statement or two. Correct. One statement or two, whichever you prefer, because you can say double Z equals 25.3. Done. Or you could say double Z, and on the next line say Z equals 25.3. Done. Both correct. You pick another one, Kai? Don't go through all of them now. If you're really not sure what's wrong.
F, please.
Hmm? F. Declare, a date variable called Christmas with a capital C. Some of you lowercased it. That's good, because that's not Camelback, is it? Other people can't stand Christmas unless it's capitalized. That's cool, I can live with that, because that's what I said. So I want to declare a variable, Kyle. What type is it going to be? Good. And then we have to tell, what are we going to call it? Jeez, what is going on here? There we go. Christmas. Right? Then what does it say? And set its value to December 25th, 2012. And you wouldn't believe all the permutations I got here. Notice that the word automatically capitalized Christmas for me. Thank you. How do we do that? If it's me and I've forgotten, I'm going back, check the notes. You have time to check every darn thing on the quiz? Probably, yeah, if you're willing to stay here for, what'd you say, 9 o'clock? Yeah, you can check every darn thing, but that's why I want you to review these, do the practice sheets, because some of the stuff you're going to go, oop, I did that in the sales tax calculator program. Oop, I did that over here in the worksheet. Oop, I did that over there in the practice sheet. And hopefully you'll be able to jump to it. Don't expect you to have this stuff memorized, but hopefully you won't have to go through all of my notes looking for it. Remember, if you're looking at my notes online, you can go home and then say I'm declaring a variable. Anything in here on dates? Named variables, naming conventions, type dates, declaring variables. Ooh, there's one. Doesn't show me how to set it. Initializing. Ooh, please, let there be a date. Oh, there we go. Today. Oh, don't want today. Oh, look at there. With my birth date in it. No, it's not my birthday. But there's your clue. New date, time, year, month, day. I think it's obvious. I picked that date for a reason. You can't mess up that that's not the month. That's got to be the year. That's not the month. It's got to be the day. Has to be in that order. Has to look exactly like that. If you don't put spaces in between there, C# doesn't care. I have seen one of these with the space there missing. New is not part of the type. New is a command. Make me a new one, just like today or yesterday we saw make me a new form. A new form welcome. This says make a new date. Date time today is a special case that automatically makes one. But if you want a regular date, a different date other than today or now, then you have to say new. Here it is on 2 lines. Both acceptable. The only thing with 2 lines, you have to remember that you put the variable on the left-hand side of the equal sign. That help, Kyle? Mike, you're awful quiet back there. You were looking forward to this. What do you got?
Can you do concatenation?
Concatenation. First, I have to learn how to say it. Concatenation. Concatenation is pretty straightforward. What do we use it with?
Strings.
And anything else. Strings concatenate to anything. You don't always get the results you want, but you can syntactically, legally, concatenate strings to anything. But some of the examples I did in class is I could create a string called first and set that equal to vocal. Another string called last, set that equal to gall. And then another string called full name that I'm immediately going to initialize, or I can do it on the next line, to first plus last. What C# will do is concatenate, stick those 2 strings together. It's a calculation with strings. But those are smushed, right? Remember the technical term smushed? If I want to, I can concatenate other things, like an empty or a space, excuse me, not an empty string, a space. And now I'll get Volker space gall. And I can even calculate 1959 if I want to, for whatever reason. That's a number, legal. I can concatenate grade to that, legal. So you can concatenate variables of any type. I can 2-string this. No, I can't. It's already a string. Excuse me. Let's say we have a score. I can 2-string that and format it for n with 2 decimal places. Why would I 2-string it? Because I want the 2 decimal places. If score is a double and it's 33.33333, it will concatenate 33.33333 as many as C# wants, which may be, I think it's 8 digits after the decimal place. So concatenation just means stick other stuff on a string to put them together. In your lab 3, where you did the error checking, you created a message box that had 2 strings that were concatenated together. with plus sign. I think that's all for concatenation. What's the question?
I was gonna go over.
Okay. Tim, you were pointing at yourself as one of the stupid people in the room, so what can I do to make you smarter?
Thanks for clarifying.
No problem. It's in the recording. Speaking of which, let me pause this. Let me stop it, and then I'll bring it back to life. Let's take a little break here. Uh-oh. Did I ever start it? I think I did, didn't I?
Guess you'll have to start again. Whoops.